Thank you, Wanyama. Just before I begin, just to recognize the support from Solidarity Center, Article 19, and East Africa Editor Society for making this day successful and to have this gathering here. You can see actually it is successful. And also just recognize a team from KUJ. I can see John Atambo, who is the chair of KUJ, is here. We have Silas Kiragu, who is a member of the executive of KUJ. We have Robert Kipto, again, who is also a member of the executive of KUJ. We have Walter Menya, also an executive member of KUJ. Some of and also my former deputy is also here, Mary Daraja, until she was poached by the management. She's also here. So you can see when I talk as Eric, I'm not just speaking as an individual, but at least we've got a team that actually work to make KUJ what it is. So also just to let you know that we'll jump a section of the program because our guests will come in later, the DPP and a representative of the ministry, the CS or the PS will be joining us later on. So we decided to adjust the program so that we can continue the conversation. So let me begin by saying that the International Day to End Impunity and for Crimes Against Journalists actually is a very important day in the calendar of journalism. And we always marked it in this room. Actually, we were telling the hotel that on November 2nd, this room should be permanently booked for journalists every year, because this is where we've always called home to come and call out perpetrators of impunity and people who target journalists when they are doing their work. As we speak right now, actually there is a number of journalists there. I've opened a file which they are calling a red line file, and we'll be reaching out to DCI to explain to us why they are calling this red line file, whereby NTV reporter actually was summoned yesterday and recorded a statement. I'm told even 3 more have been summoned again to go and record statement as a result of the story that they did the other day when bandits and law enforcement are engaging in exchange of fire there. So as we mark this day, we must call out that and ask the DCI to allow journalists to do their work. Because this year we've seen unprecedented attacks on journalists, actually targeting journalists. Before, we used to see attacks, but not at the level we've seen this year, especially during the protests against high cost of life. You remember early this year, we saw police officers targeting journalists and even lobbing tear gas canisters inside the vehicles where journalists were working from. Because a newsroom should not just be seen to be a physical office where we go and work. But even if we decide that we convert this place as a workplace, it will be called a newsroom, and targeting journalists when they are working, after that is unacceptable, and we must call out the Kenya Kwanza government for that, because last year, if you look at the World Press Freedom ranking, last year we were ranked at position 69. This year we are ranked at position 161. That tells you that even this next year, when Reporters Without Borders will be releasing their World Press Freedom Index, we are not going to do well because of the incidents that we saw early this year, and we continue to see happening. Like yesterday again, during our discussions in our WhatsApp group, there's a journalist in Bungoma whose house was petrol bombed. So you can imagine if now we're even going to the extent of attacking journalists inside their homes. So who is safe? And if we have a society where the media is intimidated, we have a society where the media cannot do its work to hold those who are holding these positions of privilege to account, then we don't have a society. Even the government will not have a society to govern if we continue to attack journalists and make the media very weak. If you remember, those of you who study history and journalists, when a philosopher, Irish philosopher Edmund Burke, was addressing a British Parliament, where the term Fourth Estate came from, he looked at the House, He looked at the gallery where the public was sitting. He looked at the gallery where the diplomats were sitting. Those of you who are familiar with Parliament, those galleries, the other side, you see the diplomats sit there, the religious community sit in one of the gallery, and there's public gallery. Then he raised his head and he said, there is the fourth estate. And he was saying that there can be no democracy. A society cannot grow if we do not have the fourth estate. So however much we try to discredit, however much the government and law enforcement team may want to intimidate journalists, one word I have for them is that even them, as even the government, if the media is not there to play the role of a watchdog, even the government may not have the people to govern. So we must tell them that as much as it may be exciting to them to attack journalists, they must also know that if things go wrong, everybody will suffer, including those who are in power, because the society is destroyed. Look at what is happening in other countries. Look at what is happening, for example, our neighbors here, Somalia, that has been struggling to put in the government for years. When their government collapsed, and when the society collapses like that, everybody suffers. It's not journalists alone, but all of us suffer. So it is a responsibility of all duty bearers, as UN Plan of Action for Safety Journalists stipulates, that we have duty bearers to protect, prevent, and to prosecute. So we are calling about I'm sure, maybe in another 30 minutes or so, 1 hour, the Director of Public Prosecution will be joining us, and we'll be asking him to tell us the number of files that have already been forwarded to courts, so that those who perpetuate impunity against journalists actually can be held to account for that, so that journalists can continue to operate in a very safe environment. So let me also talk about threats to the media, and I will talk about offline and online. My friend and colleague Muredi has mentioned that nowadays people are targeting journalists online, where journalists are trolled and all manner of things are said about journalists. Sometimes it's difficult, especially for our own, for our colleagues, especially female journalists, who are actually targeted by these perpetrators of impunity whenever they take any action to defend freedom of the media. I remember a colleague telling me that sometimes she takes time before she goes online. She has to soul search. Should I open my Twitter account today to see what is going on, or I just forget about it, because of the attacks that are actually targeted towards her whenever she is reading news or hosting some shows on TV. And that tells you that if we start doing that, then that means that we are having a society that is collapsing, because if someone cannot go online because of fear of harassment and intimidation online, then that is not acceptable. Let me also talk about now the offline, which are actually the physical ones. We've seen a number of cases, again, like I've just mentioned about a journalist in Bungoma whose house was petrol bombed yesterday. That is unacceptable, because we are trying to stop journalists from doing their job. Being a journalist is not a criminal offense, but we exist for the common good of the society. It's a society that is free from corruption, a society that observes rule of law, a society that gives everybody a chance, and a society that ensures there's a justice and everybody is allowed to pursue any opportunity that is available. So we must call out the people who are trying to intimidate journalists through such attacks. So then the last one, which I want to talk about, because that is also at the center of what we want to discuss, is about targeting the reputation of media houses through information disorder, which is misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, because again, that is where now everybody is targeting, and we know that journalists thrive as a result of the content that we create in newsrooms. The other day I said that that is the principle and that is the cornerstone of the media, if we do not have the content, then the journalism we are talking about may not exist. And now the content again is now facing threat from misinformation and disinformation. And these are the people who even nowadays even design a newspaper with a lot of information that is misleading, so that again our reputation can be attacked. And because that is the principle of journalism, is about the content that we create. And that is the reason why when we were looking at what do we do this year, and we decided to carry out a research on the impact of misinformation and disinformation, so that we can also have a conversation around this. Largely, as a union, we usually try to, as much as possible, to concentrate on bread and butter. But now at the center of this bread and butter, if we do not have journalism, if we do not have content, we may also not have to attack our vehicles whenever we are out there. Now they are going now to the soul of journalism, which is content, through misinformation and disinformation, so that they discredit us what we do. And if that happens, then there's a problem. Because if you look at what is happening in newsrooms, most newsrooms right now are operating on red alert. So one of the biggest media houses in East and Central Africa is issuing profit notice. What does that mean? It means that we are looking at job losses in the coming months, in the coming weeks. We know that the oldest media house in Kenya and in the region is also struggling. Again, we're expecting to see some job losses there. And if this is happening, it means that we may not have the media to talk about. So that's why we decided to probably deviate a bit with the support of our Solidarity Center to look at the fresh attack that is now going for the heart and soul of journalism, which is the content, through misinformation and disinformation. And we have recommendations there that if all of us join hands and see how we can protect the heart and soul of media, which is content, then we'll have journalism to talk about next year when we meet here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope that we'll have fruitful deliberations here after this. Thank you.